Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the public briefing of the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment. My name is Robert Hawkins. I am the MLA for Yellowknife Centre and the chair of the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment. At this moment, before we proceed to our briefing, I would now like to ask the members within the room to acknowledge and put themselves officially on the record, and I will begin on my far left with the MLA over there.
Good evening. Welcome, George Nirsu, MLA for the Mackenzie Delta.
Good evening, MLA Kate Reed, Great Slave.
Julian Morse, Frame Lake.
And thank you. Today we will receive a briefing from the ECC Minister, Jay Macdonald, on caribou harvesting. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed to the Assembly social media channel, and as I always say, to our millions of subscribers around the world. And I would like to remind all members, including our subscribers out there, that to direct all questions and comments through myself as chair to help ensure we run a smooth and straightforward meeting. At this particular time, I'd now like to pass the microphone on to Minister Macdonald, and if you could introduce your delegation and proceed straight into your opening comments as appropriate, and then we will proceed to the presentation online when you're ready. Minister Macdonald, if you please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here with me this evening is Deputy Minister Robert Jenkins, Assistant Deputy Minister Brett Elkin, Assistant Deputy Minister Janice Seaman, North Slave Regional Superintendent Seth Bennett, Rona Kindop, Director of Wildlife, and Karen Clark, Manager Research and Management with ECC's Wildlife Division. Thank you to Mr. Chair and committee members for the invitation to provide Sketty with information regarding planning for the next Tibbet to Contoido winter road season, along with some additional information related to caribou conservation and recovery actions, new population estimates for the Bathurst and Blue-Nosed East barren ground caribou herds, the Caribou Guardian Coalition, and outcomes of the recent respected harvester meeting held in November of 2025. On November 12, 2025, ECC released new population estimates for the Blue-Nosed East and Bathurst herds. We will provide an overview of the survey results, along with work being done with Indigenous governments, Indigenous organizations, renewable resources boards, and other co-management partners to support recovery of the herd. Mr. Chair, it is a high priority for our government to work with our co-management partners to support the long-term sustainability of these herds and encourage safe, legal, and respectful harvesting. As committee members are aware, ECC cannot comment on ongoing investigations, but the department can still share some details on our overall enforcement efforts during this briefing. I want to highlight that ECC emphasizes public education as a key part of our compliance model to ensure residents understand the importance of respectful and sustainable wildlife harvesting. We have been working closely with Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations and other co-management partners on a respected, harvested campaign that emphasizes traditional values and practices. I'd like to now turn to Deputy Minister Jenkins to take you through the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. I'd now like to acknowledge the Deputy Minister Jenkins. Please, if you'd like to proceed when you're ready. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, committee. Today's presentation will cover conservation and recovery actions with co-management partners, new population estimates for the Bathurst and Blue-Nosed East barren ground caribou herds, Mobile Core Bathurst Caribou Management Zone, enforcement along the Tibbet to Contoido Winter Road, Indigenous-led guardian and monitoring programs, and next steps. ECC has been working with our co-management partners to take a number of actions to support Bathurst and Blue-Nosed East caribou conservation and recovery. With respect to harvest management for the Bathurst herd, harvest of the Bathurst herd has been completely closed since 2015. There are 10 tags for subsistence purposes in Nunavut. For the Blue Nose East herd, a total allowable harvest of 395 caribou is in place in Wekwaji. 450 tags are available in Nunavut and 30 in the Sawtoo, implemented through Delaney's Community Conservation Plan. Currently, there are no restrictions of Indigenous harvest of the Beverly herd, and there's one tag for NWT resident harvesters in Zone UBC 01. With respects to predator management, ENR and the Det'anchogh government conducted a 5-year wolf management program from 2020 to 2024. The program was based primarily on support for wolf harvesters in the traditional economy, harvester training, and enhanced research and monitoring on the herd's winter range in the North Slave region. The Det'anchogh government continues to support wolf harvest in the Wekwaji region. GNWT offers a $200 incentive on the ranges of the Bathurst and Blue Nose East herds. With respect to habitat protection, habitat management for the two herds is guided by the collaboratively developed Bathurst Caribou Range Plan and the Taking Care of Caribou Plan, which includes the Blue Nose East herd. The GNWT is working with co-management partners to identify key caribou habitat as a value at risk under the wildlife management system. The NWT's effective environmental and regulatory processes is also an important forum where caribou habitat is considered. And with respect to enhanced research and monitoring actions, the GNWT worked with its co-management partners to increase the number of collared caribou and increase the frequency of surveys to every 2 years. We are also strengthening the use of traditional knowledge and research undertaken with the help of national and international caribou scientists. A key piece of information for management decisions is population size and trend. I will present results of the recent population surveys that were completed on the Bathurst and Blue Nose East caribou herds this past June. We estimate population size of barren ground caribou herds using a calving ground survey. We survey the caribou on the calving grounds in June because in these herds, females are together in a small area at that time of year. Calving ground surveys require a large team of people working together. The team includes observers from Indigenous groups and co-management partners for the caribou herd ranges. Reconnaissance surveys help show overall abundance and distribution of caribou. We survey the low-density areas to visually count the caribou. In areas of high density, we take photographs with a specialized plane, then count them later. We are estimating the female portion of the herd with the calving ground survey, as the males do not migrate to the calving ground. We add in the male component after our fall composition surveys, providing us with a proportion of males per females. For both Bathurst and Blue Nose East caribou surveys, we had excellent visibility, conducted the survey during the peak of the calving, and had high survey coverage. All of these factors have resulted in us having high confidence in our survey estimates. The Bathurst Reconnaissance Survey covered a large area beyond where we expected to find breeding cows to ensure that caribou were not missed. On this map, the red dots indicate 21 to 31 caribou, and the single yellow dot indicates a group between 70 and 80 caribou. Few caribou were observed on the recon survey, and most caribou were observed in a small core area. The colored blocks show how the survey area was divided up for the abundance survey. The photo plane surveyed nearly 100% of the area within the red polygon, and a visual survey covered the other colored blocks. This slide shows the Bathurst herd. The graph on the right shows the year since 2009 when there was a population survey to estimate the number of caribou in the herd. The height of the bar shows the number of caribou in the herd from each survey, so higher bars show there were more caribou in that survey. In 2009, when this graph starts, the Bathurst herd estimate was about 32,000 caribou. This was a big decrease from 1986, when the herd was estimated at approximately 470,000 caribou. The Bathurst herd declined slowly through the 90s and then more quickly after 2006. We have long known from Indigenous elders and from surveys that these herds tend to go through times of high numbers and low numbers over time, but this is an extreme decline. The 2025 Bathurst herd estimate of approximately 3,609 adult caribou is lower than the 2022 herd estimate of about 6,851 caribou. This represents a decline of 47% over 3 years, based on the number of cows gathered on the Bathurst calving ground in June 2022 and in June 2025. In the last 5 years, however, we have seen higher rates of movement of Bathurst cows to calve and associate with adjacent herds. To understand this level of decline, we looked at movements of collared animals, as it appeared the magnitude of decline could not be solely explained by Bathurst demographic data, so the data that describes mortality, birth, and death rates. This may be a result of high overlap in the Bluenose East, Bathurst, and Beverly herds during winter since 2021. The Beverly herd was recently estimated at 153,000, and so is much, much larger than the Bathurst herd, over 40 times larger. The Bluenose East herd is roughly 8 times as large. In recent years, we have seen a higher proportion of collared Bathurst cows to the Beverly and Bluenose East herds. While some caution is needed in interpreting the percentage of Bathurst cows that have moved to other herds, given low sample sizes, a high proportion have shifted to the larger Beverly herd over the past 3 years. This map shows the June 2025 Bluenose East calving ground survey area in Nunavut. The survey crew was based out of Kugluktuk, which is seen on the map to the east of the survey area. The first stage of the survey is the reconnaissance survey, which shows overall abundance and distribution of caribou. The smallest circles indicate a group of 1 to 5 caribou, and the largest circles indicate a group of 31 to 35 caribou. The yellow stars and orange crosses show the locations of collared cows and bulls. The colored blocks in the background show how the area was divided into areas for the next part of the survey. This slide shows the Bluenose East herd. The graph on the right shows the year since 2010, when there was a population survey to estimate the number of caribou in the herd. As mentioned previously, the height of the bar shows the number of caribou in the herd from each survey, so higher bars show there were more caribou in that survey. The herd was estimated at 122,000 adult caribou in 2010 and underwent a major decrease in size to approximately 19,000 caribou in 2018. There was an increase in the estimated number of Bluenose East caribou to 23,202 in 2021 and 39,525 in 2023. The most recent population estimate from 2025 is 28,759 adult caribou, down from the 2023 survey results, but still an increase compared to the 2018 and 2021 surveys. One of the key measures in place to protect the Bathurst herd is the Mobile Core Bathurst Caribou Management Zone, or Mobile Zone. The Mobile Zone was put in place in 2015 to implement a complete harvest closure for the Bathurst herd, while allowing for harvest of other healthy herds and other wildlife species located outside of the Mobile Zone. Each week, maps of the Mobile Zone are updated and posted in ECC and community offices along the Winter Road and on ECC's webpage and social media posts. Since 2020, we have seen declining numbers of illegal harvest within the Mobile Zone. There were no cases of illegal harvest in the Mobile Zone in 23-24, and only 2 harvested caribou in the Mobile Zone in 24-25. Despite the decline in cases in recent years, a small number of people continue to engage in illegal and disrespectful hunting practices. In response, ECC has been working with Indigenous governments, Indigenous organizations, and other co-management partners to promote safe, legal, and respectful harvesting practices. Each winter, ECC maintains an active compliance and enforcement presence along the Tibbet to Contoito Winter Road. Our mission is to promote wildlife conservation, sustainable management by enforcing compliance with territorial regulations. This is achieved through proactive monitoring, detection, deterrence, and documentation of violations along or near the Tibbet to Contoito Winter Road. We complement enforcement with education, outreach, and partnership efforts while maintaining the highest standards of officer and public safety. We have 4 main objectives we are working to achieve. The first is visible enforcement presence. We want to maintain a strong and consistent patrol presence in partnership with Indigenous guardians and community-based monitors to promote compliance and deter illegal activity. Second, high compliance with the Wildlife Act and regulations, including the mobile zone. We want to support adherence to the Mobile Corps Bathurst Caribou Management Zone regulations through joint monitoring, education, and collaboration with Indigenous guardians and community-based monitors. Our third objective is fair and defensible investigations. We want to conduct investigations that meet legal standards, preserve evidence integrity, and incorporate local knowledge where appropriate to strengthen outcomes. And our fourth objective is seamless coordination. We want to work collaboratively with the Tibbet to Contoito Winter Road Joint Venture Road Security Team, nearby maintenance camps, guardians, and community-based monitors to ensure safety, operational efficiency, and shared stewardship. There are also Indigenous government-led monitoring and guardian programs along the Winter Road led by the Det'anchogh government, Yellowknife Standing First Nation, and North Slave Métis Alliance. These programs also play an important role in educating hunters, explaining the mobile zone and harvesting regulations, monitoring harvest, and reporting issues to ECC officers. To prepare for the season, ECC officers coordinated a joint workshop of all the groups before the season started. The workshop focused on safety, communications, reporting, and coordination between individual programs and ECC. The Caribou Guardians Coalition also plays an important role in promoting caribou conservation and respectful harvesting. The coalition arose from one of 9 recommendations of the Bathurst Caribou Range Plan to support Indigenous groups in the coordinated development and use of integrated community guardianship programs. The coalition received funding from ECCC and the Indigenous Centre for Cumulative Effects to hire an executive director and do a lot of work on supporting IGs in their programs. In the words of Jocelyn Zoe from the Det'anchogh government, the more people they have out monitoring and talking to harvesters, the better the outcomes for caribou and for communities. While most harvesters respect the conservation measures that are in place, a small number of people continue to hunt illegally, adding pressures to the concerning state of the Bathurst herd. In 2021, there were 143 caribou illegally harvested in the North Slave region, including 123 in the mobile zone. We also saw cases of wounding and disrespectful behavior. In December of 2021, ECC brought together respected harvesters from Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations that traditionally harvest up the Tibbet to Contoito Winter Road to come up with ways we can work together to encourage safe and respectful harvesting. That gathering was followed by a leadership meeting endorsing the recommendations. Overall, 8 recommendations came out of the gathering and endorsed by leadership. We worked with IGs and co-management partners to implement those recommendations. The recommendations included agreement to work together and increase communication and public awareness, increase coordination amongst monitor and guardian programs, and shared statistics on illegal and disrespectful harvesting. We initiated a campaign consisting of regular radio ads, website ads, social media posts, and signs along the winter road. This included a series of signs promoting respectful traditional practices that included the logos of all 7 Indigenous governments who participated in the campaign. Over the winter 2025, signs of wastage were observed by harvesters, winter road monitors, officers, and guardians. All but 2 incidents occurred outside the mobile zone. In response, we held another 2 respected harvesters gatherings in August and November of 2025. In terms of next steps, we will continue working with co-management partners on caribou monitoring, conservation, and recovery actions. We will meet with Indigenous government-led monitoring programs to prepare for the 2026 winter road season. We will maintain collaborative public education and awareness efforts to promote safe, illegal, and respectful harvest. And we will maintain GNBT-led compliance and enforcement efforts. With that, Mr. Chair, concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for that thorough presentation. I appreciate that. I have no doubt members will have questions. I certainly do myself. I have a number of them. But that said, as always, we go to committee members first and look to committee members. I have Mr. Morris who would like to ask, followed by Ms. Reed and Mr. Narasu. So we'll proceed in that order. Mr. Morris, when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you very much. The first question I wanted to ask is just related to the idea of, well, to the caribou migrating out of the Bathurst herd and starting to join the Beverly and the Blue Nose. I've seen lots of people talk about it online, so I'm glad it was brought up in the presentation. That there's often kind of opinions shared that, you know, the Bathurst herd didn't just disappear, the caribou moved. So I'd appreciate any information you can help us better understand and the public better understand what is meant by, I guess, how should we interpret the Bathurst decline? Like, is the fact that the herd has declined by half in the past couple of years, as found in the survey, does that mean that caribou are being eliminated from the herd? Does it mean that caribou are moving? It probably means a bit of both. So I'd like to understand it, because it feels to me that we are moving in the direction of the Bathurst herd vacating their calving ground completely. I don't know what's going to happen, but with we've watched the population be cut in half several times. It's down to a couple thousand animals at this point. It's hard to believe that they're going to recover at this time, but that's speculative. So I'll give it over to the scientists to give us better information. But I'm just trying to get a hold of what feels like kind of rumors and a lot of online chatter, and let biologists explain to the public what's going on. Thanks.
Thank you. The Minister, would you like to start with that and we can proceed as directed?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the very thorough question from the member. I will pass to Assistant Deputy Minister Elkin for a response. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. ADM Elkin, if you would help us with that question, please. Microphones are automatic. We have
Automatic.
in
Perfect.
the
Thank you.
video booth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with a high level, and depending on if there's follow-up questions, we can turn to one of our managers of wildlife research and management on this. I'll maybe go a little bit further back, and I don't want to make it too long an answer, but as I think all of you are aware, we manage by herds. We know that we manage bare ground caribou at 2 levels. One is as a species. We have recovery strategies for all caribou. We also manage on a herd level because we've seen over long periods of time that there's a high degree of fidelity to calving grounds. That's how we define the herds. In winter, we may see a lot of overlap between herds, and it's often during those time periods or the migration back to calving grounds when we have seen over the years, it's not a new thing, a small percentage will move between herds, but they remain largely high fidelity to their herds. What we started to see when we started to see declines in herds across North America, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, is there was quite a few herds where we were seeing declines. We had a couple of years we were able to get a number of different herds surveyed in the same year. Sometimes they'll be done in different years. And we expanded the coverage of where we would do our calving ground surveys. One of the other things earlier in the decline that people would point to was, were they just calving somewhere different? You were missing them. So we had a couple of years. We were basically covering from Blue Nose East to Beverly. We were surveying every piece of ground out there just to look at the distribution. What we found during that time, it largely was still on calving grounds. So to come back to the emigration between herds, we've known based on one of the uses of collared caribou is that it shows that movement between herds. And we've always had a small percentage, in some years it'll move, various directions. What we've seen in the last 3 to 5 years is most of the movement has been more unidirectional. So it has been Bathurst, mostly to Beverly, but some to Blue Nose East. Over the last 6, 7 years, if you go back that much further, there has been some movement the other way, but predominantly what we're seeing lately is a movement to Beverly. What we know from some of those early declines, the reason I gave that longer answer is when we were seeing declines of multiple herds, the movement did not account for those declines. We were seeing, if you looked at all the herds, compiled the numbers, we were seeing major declines in numbers. The scientists now say that it's still, the rate of movement we're seeing between the herds does not account for all of the decline, but no question it's part of it. One of the things we do know is that this is multifactorial. There isn't one thing that's been driving these declines. It's multiple things, and they probably, which ones are more dominant, have changed over time. But that's certainly, to your point, having given you a long answer, it is something we need to monitor closely now, because to your point, when you get really low, when you lose a small percentage or up to 10, 15%, was what we saw in the last couple of years on a small sample size, that becomes worrisome. So it contributes to whatever else is driving these herds. So that will be a focus. One of the things we need to work on is getting number of collars on the Bathurst herd back up. Our target was, when we saw the decline, to get 70 collars per herd for the Blue Nose East, Bathurst, and Beverly. Based on our biostatisticians who specialize in caribou, they said that would help us know what's going on in the herds. One of the challenges, because of the overlap of herds on winter range, is when you have 150,000 Beverly caribou overlapping with now 3,600 Bathurst, harder and harder to know that you're increasing your chances of putting on a Bathurst. So our sample size on Bathurst collars has gone down, and that will be one of our focus with our co-management partners, is get those numbers up to stay focused on the point that you raised. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that detailed answer, very much so. MLA Morris, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the detailed answer too. I think there's a lot of hearsay about caribou, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to get word out from the experts. I'm going to turn a bit to a slightly different topic. The 2025 environmental audit pointed out a lack of data on harvest rates, and GNWT noted in their response that acquiring accurate harvest reporting is an ongoing challenge. What steps has the GNWT undertaken to develop mutually acceptable reporting mechanisms with Indigenous governments and organizations, recognizing the co-management framework that we're working within to develop better confidence in the harvest estimates that we're collecting?
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will again pass to Assistant Deputy Minister Elkin.
Okay, thank you. ADM Elkin, if you would please enlighten us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that has been one of the challenges over time. A lot of our harvest monitoring programs for non-Indigenous harvests, so resident, non-resident, alien, because they are all done based on tags. We've had a good way to track how many tags were issued, and we have a voluntary, with very high, good uptake, reporting system. So we've been able to track fairly well for both caribou and other species harvest by those groups. There is no legal program or mechanism in place historically to require Indigenous harvesters to report their harvest. What we did, and I wish I could remember the year, but it goes back a ways to get at this question, because I think both ourselves and our co-management partners all realize the value of being able to reasonably accurately track harvest, especially when there's an issue in place. Under the Wildlife Act, we committed to hold a meeting with all our Indigenous partners and co-management partners once each year. And it's got to be at least 10 years ago, we held one of the meetings that focused on how do we set up Indigenous-led harvest monitoring program, because we don't have that ability to enforce it, but we could have groups voluntarily do so. We've actually had a lot of great success. I think some of the early programs were the Inuvialuit and the Gwich'in, and they have their own harvest monitoring programs, very detailed, very accurate. So they'll have regionally based, but many species. And that has evolved, so I think we've got them from up in the Beaufort Delta down to organizations in the South Slave. KFN has a great program running. So that has helped get monitoring for more of the Indigenous harvest. One of the challenges now, because we have a mobile zone where there shouldn't be any harvest is illegal. So that's a little bit tricky to follow. What we are trying to do on the other herds adjacent to the Bathurst, because that's where our focus are, that's one of the strengths, I think, of to extend on the initial early work to get Indigenous-led monitoring programs. These Guardian programs and monitoring programs led by North Slave Métis Alliance, Waikideni First Nation, the Det'anchogh government is helping us get that in the North Slave. So they have monitors out there. One of the things they're tracking, in addition to trying to educate on harvest and on the decline of the Bathurst, is to get that harvest. Often they're dealing with their own members out there, so Det'anchogh monitors are often dealing with Det'anchogh harvesters. But we're slowly working to try to get a better grasp on what is that total harvest. Obviously, we've totally closed all in non-Indigenous harvest for all the herds except for Beverly way to the east. You can get a tag, but otherwise it's all closed. So there's nothing to monitor for that, but we were working with our partners. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. I now go to MLA Reid, followed by MLA Narasu. Ms. Reid, when you have a moment, are you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you making the time, especially with this topic being top of mind for a lot of people. I'm fairly certain the department is probably aware of Pat Kane's photo essay that just came out, Equo. It's really impactful. I want to go back to some of what Mr. Morse was asking about earlier and some of your comments in response to his questions. You said that there are multifactorial reasons of decline, so we spoke a little bit about the merging or emigration of the herds. There's overhunting, and feel free to correct me if I'm getting them wrong, or if some of them are more dominant than others. There's resource development and roads, there's predation increases, there's climate change impacting food sources of caribou, and then as we spoke about, and you said there's a historical balance of like all of these factors, some are larger than others. Which ones is the department seeing to be dominant right now? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Minister, would you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh.
We'll,
No, I'll take the mic back.
Mr. Chair,
I'll take the mic back and I'll have the 1 second. I'll come back to you, Minister. I'll come back to you. Okay. Minister, if you'd like to let us know who shall take the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass this to Karen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ma'am, if you would, please, for
Thank you.
for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. And thanks for that great question. It's not an easy question to answer. It's a very challenging topic to try to tease out. I would say at this point, the department is not, we're investigating all the factors that are influencing caribou, and I would say it's very difficult to say at this point in time whether there's any one dominant factor that's playing into it. But some of the things that we're looking into, we So we are the primary monitors. We're responsible for monitoring barren ground caribou and doing the population surveys and the composition surveys and running the collaring programs. And we rely on partnerships with academic partners, with universities, with Indigenous governments, with other interested parties to really dive into these key research questions that help us understand what's going on. So some of the research that we are partnering on is looking into the environmental factors that are influencing caribou. So things like snow depth, for example. Deeper snows result in caribou not being able to access their foods. The temperatures, increased temperatures in the summertime result in physiological challenges. They also are linked then to the prevalence of disease and parasites becoming more abundant and impacting the health and condition of caribou. We look at things like insect harassment. We have an academic partner that's putting audio recorders on our collars to try to get at times of the summer that are high insect harassment periods, and then to consider how that might be energetically a cost to the caribou. So those are just a few of the things. We also, I think was mentioned in the presentation, ran a predator management, wolf management program to try to curtail predation of the blue-nosed eastern Bathurst on their winter range. Harvest is an important factor on the herds where there are harvesting opportunities, so the Caribou Guardian programs are really important there too. So all that to say, there's no smoking gun. I mean, I wish there was, but it's really teasing out, how these factors are integrating, and we use modeling tools to also then help us bring together all those factors and then model and make projections and try to understand which of those factors are playing a more predominant role. So it's work that we're undertaking, and it's a work in progress. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. If I have it correctly, Ms. Clark?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Emily Reed, if you had anything further, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that detailed answer. I am going to switch topics so I don't think. Thanks, Ms. Clark. So I had the privilege of attending Geoscience a couple weeks ago. Two of your partners had just signed an MOU, the YKDFN and the Clichan, to develop the Arctic Security Corridor or the Slave Geological Province or whatever we're calling it this particular day of the week. And it was very heartening to hear leadership putting caribou and this sustaining of caribou herds first in their commentary. And I know that there has been public discussion about what that might look like a little bit, not intensively, obviously, because it's still early days. And as Ms. Clark was saying earlier, you are the monitors, the surveyors, the folks who are tracking the caribou to make sure things are going well, or if they're not going well, alerting the public. And I think there is value to providing assurances to the public at this stage around what are some of your research topics that you're just speaking about, and indeed some of your planning with your Indigenous partners, how that is going to continue to alleviate or mitigate the impacts of this project on the caribou herds, and what can you speak about to this time? Thanks.
Thank you. Minister, I'll go to you unless, of course, you point directly to one of your staff members. And that said, Minister, as you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I think, at this point, as you said, it's early days in this venture, and certainly, You know, I've had a number of conversations with all of the Indigenous governments and organizations, and primarily in the North Slave as well as others, over the last number of weeks since the numbers have come out on the most recent surveys. And I think, you know, this is top of mind for all of us, and certainly looking at how we can expand our work together, our collaborative efforts, to ensure that we're putting the caribou first. And I think that has really been a big part of the conversation, and, you know, the commitment at our working group levels to come to the table to continue those conversations and to find pathways forward with our co-management partners that we can all, you know, work together on to ensure that we are looking out for the caribou. I don't know if I will pass to Deputy Minister Jenkins for further comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir, for that. Deputy Minister, if you would please help enlighten us.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the question. You know, we're also doing some work in terms of, you know, what are the impacts potentially of road developments and on caribou, water and fish. And the Cumulative Impact Monitoring Program actually issued a specific directed funding call for research projects this fall to really look at that. Again, sort of looking to sort of inform best practices for mitigating any negative effects from road construction, either existing or ongoing or planned in the NEBT. So we're looking at other aspects there in addition to you know, the continued sort of monitoring work that the department is doing in terms of caribou populations. So that's another piece that we put out this fall to help inform any decisions that may be made in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. I now recognize Emily Narasu. When you're ready, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to touch on traditional knowledge. Where I come from in the Beaufort Delta, traditional knowledge is not really used or emphasized very much in terms of conservation of caribou. The porcupine caribou is healthy, but you know, their migration routes are changing. There's a lot of them collared, and they're put on their website, and as soon as they're close to one of the communities, they don't give them a chance to migrate. So migration disturbance is a big factor in that, and their migration route and timing of their migration is changing drastically. We don't even see caribou in our region for a few years now. We've asked the management board if they can, you know, turn their website off during the migration route so they can, no one knows where they are, but it's being followed on their website, and as soon as they come close to one of the communities, it's plastered all over social media, and by the time they even get there, we call them let the leaders pass. We're always telling the younger generation to let the leaders pass. That way they'll stay around in the region all winter. But the education part was really difficult because everybody wants to go hunting, and you know, we used to listen to our elders when they say, you know, there's caribou is going to be moving. They know where the caribou is. Before technology was here, they know where they were, when they were coming, so people would, you know, anticipate that and let the leaders pass first, then they would go hunting. But right now it's all technology. Everything is technology, and everything is changing. You know, how is the GNWT working on strengthening the use of traditional knowledge in its management practices? Because, you know, we try to educate the general public on conservation versus treaty rights. And treaty rights always seem to trump conservation. They don't realize what the management boards are trying to do, conserve for generations to come. But how are you strengthening the traditional knowledge in management practices. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Minister, if you'd start off with, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I think, we continue to expand and collaborate educational efforts to promote the legal, safe, and traditional harvesting practices. And, a lot of the conversations I've had in the 2 years that I've been minister, certainly in meetings with Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations, have really, focused on a lot of storytelling from the leaders, talking about the history, traditional roots and traditional practices. And I think that those are, at a political level, are really key conversations to have, that translate down to the operational level and to our folks on the ground. Our Indigenous governments and organizational leaders are encouraged to share this messaging for respectful and traditional harvesting with their communities. And the stories like MLA Narasu said, to let the leaders pass. These are traditional activities that, are encouraged to be passed down. And a big part of that is ensuring that we are educating and supporting those Indigenous governments in that education effort, as well as, through all of our activities on the Winter Road, and that we're really focused on promoting the respectful harvesting piece. And, one of the efforts we did last winter was a joint effort after one of the incidents on the Winter Road where where myself as minister, the department, and all of the Indigenous governments came out with a joint messaging effort to address that and encourage our folks, as well as, all of the members of the different organizations and governments, to really respect the harvesting practices of their elders and what is proper in the tradition. I will pass to Deputy Minister Jenkins.
Thank you, Minister, for your help on that. Deputy Minister, if you would further see what you can offer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that we've got a very common goal, working with Indigenous governments, and that is to protect the caribou. And, leaders have been working very closely together in terms of how do we go about managing this situation and concerns that we're seeing in regards to wastage or disrespectful harvesting practices. And very much, the Indigenous governments are lead on that front, but they've been working with us in, again, sort of messaging to members what are respectful practices, take only what you need, and other things that we're sharing with others, and that leadership is again a really big part of our ability and working together up the Winter Road to try to address the situation, and working with between our officers and the Guardian programs that we have underway. So really strong partnership there, and their inputs in terms of traditional practices and traditional knowledge are very important as we manage the situation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Deputy Minister, Mr. Narasu, anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the answer. Going into enforcement, looking at your estimated population count from 2009, there was over 30,000. In 2025, there was 3,609 estimated. What are these? That's a drastic drop. What steps are you taking to evaluate whether current enforcement measures are effective in these conservation measures that you're taking on recovery actions? There has to be some answer to this, like why is it so much, like MLA Morris stated, where are they going? Are they taking different migration routes? Are they predators? What is your current enforcement measures? Are they effective, or how can the recovery action be implemented to conserve caribou for generations to come, and learning from from other jurisdictions too? Have you learned anything from other jurisdictions? You mentioned the Beaufort Delta. I mean, we haven't seen caribou in our region for at least 5 years or so, and I don't know what you learned from that. They're just not coming, following their same migration routes, and so we're patiently waiting, but they're always going back to Alaska because of these disturbances. Well, they're collared and they're being followed. So just I'd like to know where your current enforcement measures are they effective in this in your conservation and recovery actions? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great question. Minister, if you could help.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I'll speak very briefly to it at a very high level, and then I'll pass it over. But I think, one of the sort of key things that have been focusing on recently has been the relationship with the Guardian programs and ensuring that we're working together with our partners. Specifically here in the North Slave, a lot of good work has gone on. We've had a number of discussions with the different Indigenous governments and organizations, and talk about ways to look at expanding the program and ensuring that we have a good presence out on the road. I think encouraging our hunters to go and stop in and really focus on that education piece. I think that is really a key, one of the key drivers to, good enforcement is good education first, so that, you're educating the hunters, and hopefully that results in less enforcement actions as you go down the road. But I think certainly, having that good presence on the winter road and ensuring that we have a really solid team effort going there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass to Deputy Minister Jenkins.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Minister, please, when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. So, in terms of the, our enforcement contingent, so, we begin setting up our camps, in mid-January, and before the winter road opens. We do have officers on site, and they start shifts along the road in January when we see harvesters starting to access the area by snowmobile. And we continue those until after the road is closed. And I should say that, officers are patrolling the winter road pretty much every day. They do often assist hunters to upload the map on their GPS. We have an app that will show on your phone the location of the mobile no hunting zone, and that's really valuable information that harvesters can use so that they remain outside of the zone. And education, as the minister mentioned earlier, is very consistent with our compliance model. We want to, includes education, prevention, and enforcement, but we really do have an emphasis on education and providing people with the information to make sure that they're in line with the regulations. There's a number of other sort of eyes on the ground, and we've had a very strong partnership with Indigenous governments in terms of Guardians programs, and this is really valuable for our officers, as it does have more eyes out there that can observe activity. So we have had some really strong partnerships, and it's one that we will be continuing this year. And we've had several meetings, respectful harvesters meetings in advance of this year's winter road, and a number of recommendations have been sort of put forward in terms of perhaps, voluntary no shooting corridors, having a sort of perhaps a bit more of a unified visual identity between monitors and guardians. Again, continuing to talk about the education and the communication efforts and promoting legal, safe, and traditional harvesting practices. There's been ideas put out about collecting caribou parts for artisans, and also promoting people to stop at our Winter Road Station to get the mobile zone maps, to get that information. There's safety aspects in terms of people going on the land. Perhaps people would be willing to indicate we're going out in this area, so that if they become overdue, that would be helpful in if there's a need to go and look for people. Also a commitment between the department and the enforcement side and the guardian side to really increase and enhance information that's shared to better contribute to respectful harvesting. And so a number of different areas that we're working, between our enforcement staff and the Indigenous governments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. We've just finished round one. I have a few questions. I think I counted 10 questions I've got. I'm not going to monopolize all the time, but I'll certainly maybe steal an opportunity for two, and then go back to my colleagues. I just want to make one point, maybe a couple points quickly before I ask my questions. With respect to the care integration and exchange program, as I call it, the Caribou Exchange Program, whereas they're migrating between herds. Growing up here, I remember often people would refer to them as one caribou. It was only the government decided to put labels on them. So now whether that's fair description of it, but I often have heard that echoing the last few years back to when Bathurst will go to the Beverly and back and forth, and I respect Assistant Deputy Minister Elkin's point earlier about the out-migration and whatnot may not be the actual numbers of the impact, in the sense of saying, oh, well, everyone left and moved is the only problem. I appreciate that point. But I've often heard again, echoing, it's really one caribou, and for some reason we like to keep defining them or redefining them. I'm not a biologist, so I'm not going to try to stand on that point as fact, but I've heard that. The other aspect is often I've heard, and I was actually around for the original, well, I shouldn't say the original, but I was the latest incarnation of the Wildlife Act, and there was talk during that time, while we were out there, about not being able to manage or control Indigenous harvests, and I'm not raising that in order to get into that sort of muck, I guess I'd say it that way. However, it's often occurred to me that when we have these conversations that we don't come to the quick conclusion of saying, well, why don't we put a bounty on Indigenous harvests? So, for example, if you bring 2 ears in from a caribou, and I don't mean the little tips, I'm talking about the whole thing, as an example, why aren't we giving, say, for example, $200 for that? And that would help encourage and incentivize sort of some communication and relationship. And there's also with our enforcement people who are very talented in the understanding of what's there, their ability to communicate with their community and whatnot. They'd probably have a great dialogue and great relationship over that type of program. I don't know if 200 is too much. I don't know if it's too low. I don't know if it's even right. But that said, I would say that it would give us a great way to have a good relationship with people and incentivize folks to, if you showed up with 10 ears, that tells me you've harvested 5 caribou. And it could be a way of doing these things to motivate. So just a couple points on there, just some observations. So questions, let me just do with this. We all understand the term waste, but the problem is who defines it? And one of the problems I have with the definition of waste, and I think, I won't cite the number, I don't know if it's public yet for this particular 2025 year yet, if the actual number of waste case is public, but what I will point out is that everyone's definition of waste is slightly different, and I suspect the department has a definition of waste. I suspect if you've eaten caribou your whole life, you have a definition of waste and whatnot, versus say maybe a resident hunter, or maybe we'll call it an occasional hunter. It could be somebody who goes out, once every 5-10 years, their view on what's edible or not. And has the department, in my view, taken some consideration on, for example, building a booklet and having a section on its website to talk about how to properly hunt, harvest, dress caribou, and show and give examples and hate to say it, the good old-fashioned picture book about saying this is a caribou, this is how you clean it, this is what's considered waste, this isn't what's considered waste. If you think this is waste, well, actually, there's things you can do with it. It's that type of education that could help people. And when you talk about enforcement and you want an education tool, it'd be great to be able to point to someone and say, well, I know you don't eat caribou brain, And that may sound funny to you, but it may not sound funny to a lot of people. As a matter of fact, it may seem very important to people, and hence you could talk about that type of relationship and challenge. So what one person may understand as waste, one person may not understand as waste. So when you're reporting by way of example, I'm saying example, 5 numbers of waste, 10 numbers of waste, 50 waste events, some of the people may not be viewing it as waste. But I mean, if you're leaving a whole hind quarter and half a caribou hind, I mean, that's pretty easy, but it may not be that simple for most people. So my question for you really is about helping educate and define waste in a different manner, as I've just described as an example. Minister, any thoughts on that particular point? Thank you.
Certainly, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. You know, I mean, I think it is a challenging one to define. Certainly for me, 90+5% of the animal is harvestable, in my opinion, like my personal opinion. But that's may not necessarily be the case for everyone. But during the development of the Wildlife Act and regulations, ECC worked with the Wildlife Act Working Group consisting of partners from across the NWT, stakeholders, Wildlife Act Advisory Group, to determine what the appropriate legal threshold for the wastage should be in the NWT. And wastage is destroying, abandoning, or allowing to spoil edible parts of the wildlife. This includes backstraps, ribs, necks, front and rear shoulders, briskets. It does not include fetuses, head, lower legs, and hides. So for me, the caribou head is a delicacy. So, but it's not defined as that here. So I think, the idea of, through our relationships with our Indigenous partners, and I think, that traditional knowledge and traditional education is a big part of how we communicate wastage outside of the legal definition, I think is a very important conversation to continue. But I will pass to Deputy Minister Jenkins for additional comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I look forward to the Deputy Minister's comment. My point is more about consideration of better ways to educate, as well as to get full value out of the animal that's harvested. Deputy Minister, please.
Yeah, just building off the points from the minister, I think that these were conversations that were raised during some of our recent meetings in terms of respectful harvesting. What are some of the parts that perhaps of the animal that others may want that could be taken back to others? Talked about caribou parts for artists. Many tanners and artisans use hides, antlers, heads for their work, and often have challenges sourcing them. So is there opportunities there to, again, make something meaningful out of parts that others may not want? I think in terms of the points you've raised in terms of education and providing some of the sort of hunter education aspects, I think there is some information out there. I think we can, that's a point that we can take away and have conversations with our Indigenous partners, because it does fall under what we're working to do with them, which is really promote respectful harvesting. And, I note and take the points and agree with the points you made about information for those who may not be aware of how to process an animal and other sort of pieces. So I think it is something that we've got a very strong partnership. We're looking at this issue of respectful harvesting and how do we communicate it. And so, we take your points and we'll have those conversations with our Indigenous partners. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for that. It's just an observation about ensuring we are doing the business the best we can and getting the most out of it as well. The other quick question, if I don't, my colleagues, let me squeeze in a second one, is that it's more of a science-based per se question. I don't know if I can say the mosquito's name correctly, but I think it's Anopheles, or something like that. It's the malaria mosquito. I'm trying to remember, Anopheles or something. Point being is, there's a mosquito attributed to carrying malaria. And I was reading about this a while ago, and it talked about how the conditions of the ground have changed, where they have knocked down trees to create farmland, et cetera, and their population is skyrocketing. Has there, and we're talking about one of the impacts, similar as raised here earlier, with respect to my colleagues talking about has climate change and whatnot. Are we identifying anything in the sense of that's actually really the real story, or is it still really a shot in the dark trying to understand the caribou story? Because when I was elected in 2003, this crisis was not new. It was still being talked about for years at that point. And this is not about to be carried by the shoulders of the people before us today. But we're into the range of 22, 23 years later, and we're still talking about things, but we're not able to put our fingers down on what some of the sources are. Not only that, it seems the challenge of we're not even knowing quite clearly what's working. And I'm worried, and again, I'm not stressing about anyone at the table here today should take individual responsibility. I'm just saying something is changing the narrative. And what's stopping us from getting further down this sort of information sort of problem? Because I'm really stressed in the sense of thinking about all I've seen is one way the caribou populations have gone since I was first here in 2003. And it's terrible. And again, not to be warned by anyone here per se, but I'm asking, in those 20 plus years, it seems like nothing has changed the narrative on this. Are we seeing anything that can help improve? Can I start with the minister maybe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, a very technical question. I totally hear the sentiment of that, but I'll pass to Assistant Deputy Minister Elkin for more.
Thank you, Minister. Assistant Deputy Minister Elkin, if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've got at the heart of, I think, of what we hear from a lot of people. I think Karen phrased it as the smoking gun. I think we have learned a lot over the last decades. There's a lot of good work going on, and certainly in Northwest Territories, but also in our partner agencies, Alaska, Yukon, Quebec, Labrador. Just to maybe help provide some insight, I don't think the uncertainty is in what impacts caribou and what causes the declines or allows the increases to happen. Our challenge is we know that at any given time, it's like people, there's multiple things that affect your health. What you can't quantify easily is what percentage is each factor impacting you. So we actually have we know what the factors are. It's just at any given time, what percentage of the pressures on a caribou are driving it. Very much as we think at a landscape level of cumulative effects, that's the way we need to look at caribou health at an individual caribou level or a population. A particular caribou will have dietary pressures, harvest pressures, a variety of things that will impact its survival or its ability to reproduce. So we know what those factors are, we just can't tell you 12% is number A and 30% is number B, which makes it difficult then how do you focus? The way that people manage caribou herds is then know what those factors are. The other limitation is knowing what we can actually influence. We can't stop climate change. In the short term for caribou, we can do things over the long term to work on it. So what management levers, a term that we use, can we pull to try to help them now, knowing that caribou are facing 5, 6, 7 different factors that are lowering their nutrition, lowering their reproductive rates, lowering their survival rates. So what can we pull? And that's why it's not necessarily a scattergun approach. We're knowing that it's multiple factors driving this decline. How many of those? Let's try to act on as many as possible. Not trying to look for too much positivity here, but we are seeing some herds starting to do better. To your point, those of us who grew up here have lived through the declines. Some herds like the Beverly are doing better. We have seen some recovery in the Blue Nose East. So we cannot tell you what management actions we took specifically contribute to that, but we know we're seeing some positive response. How do we, for those herds that are not turning that corner quite yet, I think the challenge, all we can do right now is keep pulling as many levers as we can. So if there's anything that we can manage to get those pregnancy rates up. We need to basically produce baby caribou on the ground, and we need to allow the baby caribou and the cows to survive. So that's why we take this kind of broader effect. So unfortunately, that's not a very fulfilling answer that we can tell you it was cause X and we're going to do cause Y. All we can do is keep pulling all these management levers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the reason I drew the malaria mosquito issue in for maybe a better sense is that things change and have such a ripple effect. By trying to solve one problem, we've created another, and the ripple effect changes outside of our ability. So anyway, that was just I was reading something on that about spikes in malaria and why and how far they had to go back to realize the impacts of what it was actually, where the source of the problem was. I now have MLA Morris, followed by MLA Reid, and we will proceed from there. So please, Mr. Morris, when you're ready.
Thanks. Yeah, speaking of the levers we can pull, that segues well into the next area of questions I was going to ask. Knowing that there are limitations to the data that GNWT can collect, it sounds like through the co-management boards, there's a fair bit of data being collected. Does GNWT have an estimate of total harvest rates? And how do those harvest rates affect policy decisions? And I guess to kind of add a question to that, how does the lack of accurate harvest data impact the effectiveness of conservation strategies? Speaking of pretty much one of the few levers that we can actually pull. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Minister, when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just speak briefly to the Bathurst. So there is no harvesting, no legal harvesting of the Bathurst. You know, the harvesting of the other two, I think there was an effort to kind of address the data on that earlier, that we're working with our partners to try and collect that data more robustly over time. But perhaps I'll pass to
Yeah, I can start.
Deputy Minister Jenkins to give a little more detail. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Minister, if you would help us further, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as the minister mentioned, I mean, one of the strongest things that we've done is instituted a mobile no hunting zone for the Bathurst, which does move with the herd, and we regulate that. Again, other herds have allowable harvest through co-management processes, and there's a number of factors that get into how those quotas are determined. In terms of some of the other pieces that we are looking again to support the recovery, again, getting back to things like some of the programs we've partnered with the Det'anchogh on for predator management, for wolves. Some of the, there's pieces in terms of habitat protections, in terms of the range plan. So that's another key piece that's out there in terms of how we manage sort of the area in an effort to work to protect the herd. And then, as ADM Elkin mentioned, efforts, and these are continuing efforts in terms of some of the monitoring that we're doing. And a key piece, as Dr. Elkin mentioned, was working to increase the collaring of the animals, which allows us to better understand all the factors that may be contributing, and also are the animals moving between different herds. And so a number of pieces there in terms of some of the things that we're doing there in an effort to help manage the situation. But there is, again, for the Bathurst herd, right now a mobile no hunting zone, and that's been in effect since 2015, and that is for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous harvesters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Mr. Morris, anything further?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't referring to the Bathurst herd specifically. I was just referring to the total annual harvest of caribou generally in the NWT, all caribou. So was hoping to get a picture from the department as to what their general estimate might be in terms of how that informs what they think is kind of a sustainable take. And yeah, I guess yeah, I'm fine. I'm just trying to think through how to be as pointed as possible with the question to avoid dancing around answers. Yeah, I mean, that's so what I was asking is, how do harvest estimates affect policy decisions that you're making? So you've kind of said, I've heard a staff say tonight that harvest is a significant factor. I'm kind of curious how significant and how is it affecting the policy decisions that you're making? I mean, clearly with the Bathurst, the department has made the determination that no take is sustainable. So that's very clear. I was trying to get an idea in a wider sense. I mean, the Cleachville government has suggested that harvesting be banned altogether for 5 years. So they seem to feel that harvesting is not sustainable currently. That's where I'm trying to get with trying to understand how much of a take there is and whether the department considers it sustainable at this time.
Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, very, very technical question, so I will pass to Deputy Minister Jenkins to start. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Not a problem, sir. Deputy Minister?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just sort of give the high-level overview and pass to Dr. Elkin if that's acceptable to you. But thanks for the clarification. You know, in terms of the Bathurst, as you mentioned, it's closed in the NWT, but there are 10 tags for subsistence purposes in Nunavut. For the Blue Nose Heath, there is a total allowable harvest of 395 in Wakwajit, 450 tags available in Nunavut, and 30 in the Sawtoo. And what I'll ask is if Dr. Elkin can kind of walk through the process of how those numbers are determined. It is through a co-management process, and my understanding is that those determinations are that this number is acceptable for the sustainability of the herd. So, but if I could, Mr. Chair, ask Dr. Elkin to speak to how those numbers are developed through that co-management process.
Sure, and for the benefit of committee, could you just clarify 10 tags per person, 10 tags per rights holder in the sense of community?
My understanding
or 10 for the whole territory?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies. My understanding is it's 10 tags in total for subsistence purposes in Nunavut. That's the Bathurst herd.
The whole total, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Assistant Deputy Mr. Elkin, if you could to Mr. Morris's question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might delete, I think it leads in nicely to the current question. I'll actually go back to a question that was raised by Emily Narasu. I think so some of the things like monitoring harvest and factoring in that information to guide management actions goes to a really, I think, a very positive development over the course of my career. Admittedly, I've been around a long time, is that for each of these herds, this isn't the GWT managing these herds on its own. It's a co-management process. Each of the herds will have a co-management forum, whether it's settled under land claims or not. So for the Bathurst Caribou Advisory Committee. For the Blue Nose East, it's something called the ACCWM, brings together all the Indigenous governments. One thing they do really nicely, and this feeds in, I am getting to the harvest level reporting, they get together every winter, and this is the kind of season where for the Bathurst and Blue Nose East and Blue Nose West they'll be doing over this winter, they bring together all Indigenous governments, harvesters, and they all bring their information to the table, whether it's scientific, Indigenous traditional knowledge, Indigenous government monitoring, and they table all the data they'll have. So if the Bathurst herd or Blue Nose East, they'll say, here's all the information we have, including harvest data, because now we have the Indigenous governments monitoring harvest. And then they put all that data on the table. That's what helps inform the implementation of management actions. So it is, to your point, we try to get as accurate information on all aspects. What is the level of predation? Our team of scientists works with Indigenous governments to try to estimate what is the current take from predation. They work through with our co-management partners to get at that. We want to be as precise as we can, knowing that sometimes we are estimating it. Because at the end of the day, what you want to do is really know, to your point, at each point, different factors are influencing things to different levels. Probably right now, for things like the Bathurst, human harvest is not as big a factor as it was probably during the early decline, whereas wolf predation and some of the environmental factors that Karen Clark spoke to are. So I think that's the key. Bring everyone to the table. We'll be doing that over the course of this winter. Not we're just one voice at the table. Table all that information. And then I can't tell you specifically how we use the data because it'll be the cumulative. That group will say, okay, we think harvest on Blue Nose East, we have tags, our allocations, as was mentioned by the deputy. We know that X number were taken. How do we think that factors with our estimate of wolf predation or climate change driving? Or coming back to the chair's comment, what is insects? One of the insects play a big role, and as they change with climate, because during a key period after calving, when female caribou are at their poorest condition, they're lactating, they're trying to feed a calf, they need to be eating. They need to be getting as fast as they can for the winter. If they're being chased by mosquitoes and that's changing either the numbers or types, that impacts them. So in general, that's how we use the data. I can't tell you how we use the data in a specific year. It depends what the data is and what collectively at the table we think we can do based on what our estimate of any of those individual variables are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And for the record, I like bugs. MLA Reid, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can't remember who said it earlier, but I would really encourage the department to try and give as many of those Take Bull bumper stickers out as you possibly can. I think someone was talking about, trying to keep babies and mums caribou alive and increase their numbers. So I'm going to preface this question with the concept that I know that speaking well about the caribou is considered a way to encourage their numbers to come back, but it is really disheartening to see that chart that Kevin made radio based off of your numbers that you released from 1986 till now. I've been eating caribou since I was small. In recent years, both times that I was gifted a meal of caribou was by the Clean Show, and I'm so very grateful for that. One was when I was working for ENR, and one time was when I was a guest of Emily Whalen Armstrong at her community, and both of those experiences are very meaningful to me. So I don't ask this with any joy in my heart, but. At what point, in 3 years from now, when we have new survey numbers and perhaps that there is even less than there is today, at what point do we change our entire approach, I guess? I know that scientists and biologists don't like to make pronouncements, but what should we expect? Are we facing down the extinction of this particular herd, and what does that mean for the department and its partners?
Thank you for that. Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I think it's hard to predict the future for sure. I think that some of the numbers show slight improvements. In the Beverly, for example, seems to be a little bit more robust. Certainly a high level of concern for the Bathurst, and again a 25% decline in the Blue Nose East is also concerning. I think right now things are quite challenging, and I think on the positive side, if there is a positive through all of this conversation, is I think that there's a joint recognition amongst all the co-management partners that this is serious and we need to work collaboratively together to ensure that we are addressing the future of the caribou. And I think, the conversations I've had with the different leaders around the table have been in that regard. And I think there's a collective sentiment that You know, we need to do more, and we need to continue the work together to find out what we can do in the short, medium, and long term to ensure the survival of all of the herds. And I think that is really, you know, the key focus right now. And those conversations started not only recently with the release of the new numbers, but started many decades ago, but also last winter, you know, with a focus on some of the wastage and activity that happened on the winter road over the winter, and that really brought the focus together of the leaders to, you know, start to continue those conversations, to work collaboratively with all of our partners, because it's not, and no one of us can do this on our own. We need to all work together, and each of our co-management partners have to work with their communities and their members to ensure that, you know, we're relaying the right message about, do we want our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to be able to experience caribou in the Northwest Territories? And I think that's really a key question at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. MLA Reid, anything further?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to preclude your conversations, I think it's happening in January, further conversations with your co-management partners, but one of your comments stuck out to me. What does doing more look like? What does doing more, like, what does that action look like to the department? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think that, you know, as those conversations continue at our officials level, there's been a number of potential actions put on the table, brought forward. As you mentioned earlier, I know that Det'anchogh talked about a 5-year hunting ban in its entirety. There have been other conversations that are ongoing at the officials level, at the working group levels, to look at other potential mitigations that can reduce the pressure on the herds. I mean, we've talked to communities about perhaps having fall hunts instead of winter hunts to try and take some of the pressure off of the animals during the winter. Obviously, there are, you know, contributing factors and a little bit more expensive and costs, and seeing ways that we could possibly contribute to support communities in those efforts. You know, looking at, you know, there was talk about a voluntary no shooting corridor on the winter road. So that's another mitigation that could potentially come forward. But those conversations are ongoing, not only in January, but currently, and have been ongoing for, I think we had our first meeting in August. So those conversations started well before the actual latest numbers came out, to look at, you know, ways to ensure that we're putting more mitigations in place. And I really want to sort of keep pivoting back to that relationship with the guardians and the folks on the ground. And I think that that's really a key education piece, in that, you know, the guardians do great work on the ground, and, you know, they know the people from their communities, and are able to, you know, enhance that relationship. And hopefully by working with us at ECC and our officers, we can continue to improve those relationships across the board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. I now have MLA Narasu, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll switch a little bit to the transboundary management. You know, there's having different management groups or jurisdictions within this particular area, collaborating with each other on education, like I stated, conservation versus treaty rights. You're always going to have that maybe one person within the community or within the region saying that, you know, his treaty rights trumps any conservation measures that are put in place. I know in my part of the region that there's a voluntary no hunting corridor in a specific area, specifically around migration. And there's always someone saying that they have that right to go and hunt at any specific time that he or she feels that they are, that they're infringing on their treaty rights to harvest caribou or any animals that they feel they want to. Collaboration with each management board is important. How is this measure taken? I mean, are they working with each other on conservation and their recovery actions for these specific caribou herds with the decline? What is EEC taken to strengthen these transboundary management measures in collaboration with the indigenous governments within this jurisdiction? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Minister, if you want to help us with that question?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question, Emily Narasu. I think, the first one I will point out, it was in September of this year, we met with the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, or from Nunavut, and signed our MOU. Again, renewed the MOU, and in that process, we added 3 additional herds that weren't part of the original MOU. So we continue to work together collaboratively across border. As we're doing calving surveys, the calving grounds are primarily in Nunavut, so there's a lot of work that goes back and forth between the jurisdictions. The Porcupine Caribou Management Board, it consists of the NWT, the Yukon, and Canada, so that's another co-management group that works together. The Caribou Management Board's representatives from multiple jurisdictions all work together as well. And as we're working toward it, and maybe I'll just speak briefly to the start of your comments where you talked about in Indigenous rights, inherent Section 35 rights, and I think that they're part of that conversation really needs to come from leadership within communities to their members, and part of the education and the talk about respectful harvesting and the long-term survival of the caribou. And I think that we don't unfortunately live in a perfect world, and we're always not always going to get everyone to necessarily comply with the direction or the wishes of leadership, but I think that communication piece and ensuring that we're having those conversations, including our traditional knowledge and our elders, and making it something that is community-driven to address. And it's not, I don't think, my role as Minister of ECC to be in that conversation. I think that's between the appropriate Indigenous government and their members to have that conversation. So, did you want to? Mr. Chair, I'll pass to Deputy Minister Jenkins for additional comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Minister, if you would further assist us with that question from Mr. Narasu.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, the minister hit on a number of agencies and forums that exist for managing caribou in NWT, and there's also the Bathurst Caribou Advisory Committee, and there's and that includes a number, as GNWT, Government of Nunavut, Parks Canada. There's 9 Indigenous governments. There's 6 management authorities. So, as the minister mentioned, there's a number of management groups. We've developed range plans that we use to sort of, undertaken through a collaborative process to really help decision makers to manage activities in the way that supports the recovery of the Bathurst herd. The situation that we have, with the Bathurst, we have instituted a legal no hunting zone, and that was incorporated through many discussions over many years, and it is unfortunate that that step had to be taken based on the numbers that herd has. There's also the issue of there are several herds in this situation that sort of come together at points, and the other herds are more healthy, and harvest is still allowed through these other herds. And so that's where some of the other pieces harvest is still legal. And that's where issues, we work with our Indigenous government partners to address issues such as wastage when animals are taken from those other herds in the area, the Blue Nose East or the Beverly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Mr. Narasu, anything further?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification purposes, I was referring to the Blue Nose East and the Bathurst herd, specifically the management, the co-management partners within this area. Are they working together to find solutions for conservation and recovery actions? Are they working together, collaboratively, or is one community saying that, they have that right to hunt and doesn't want to work with the other communities? How is the efforts going in trying to work with these transboundary management groups within this area, not within Nunavut or in the Mackenzie Delta, specifically with these herds? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Minister, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In 2021, the Bathurst Caribou Management Committee finalized a collaboratively developed Bathurst Caribou Management Plan that outlines specific actions all parties should take to help the Bathurst herd recover. So that's one area where there is certainly, collaboration and a strong framework set in place to work together toward the Bathurst. And the other piece I'll add maybe is that at the leadership level, there's been a lot of conversations about working together collaboratively to support the recovery of the herds. And I think that really is sort of the overarching piece that drives the work at the official level to support the tables and ensure that the direction is coming down from the leadership to the officials to ensure that we're able to work together collaboratively. And I've really seen a lot of positive comments over the last number of months from all of the leadership. So I think it's, a lot of really strong efforts are being made. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. That ends our second round. It looks like we're getting close to the end. I think if we're not at the end, okay. Oh, I got other members. Why don't I squeeze in one and then we'll go to a round of one each. I'll just squeeze in really quickly. With respect to the wolves, do we have any evidence that wolf culling or wolf harvesting or accelerated wolf bounty has had a positive impact on the caribou numbers? Have we had that study? Has there been problems with it? Is there any way to fully assess the impacts of targeting wolves? And I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and say, kill more wolves, and hopefully, if I remember correctly, one wolf eats around 40 caribou per year, or thereabouts. But I mean, the point is, it's a lot of caribou per wolf. By taking them off the table, or off the game board, should have net positive impacts. So in other words, back to the point of the question is, are you seeing any positive impacts, and are you able to point to anything that shows that they're positive impacts by targeting wolves to help take the stress off caribou? Minister, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, a very technical question, so I think I'm best placed to pass to Assistant Deputy Minister Elkin for this one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Assistant Deputy Minister Elkin, if you would, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Early on in the major decline for the Bathurst herd, but also the Blue Nose East, when we were working with our co-management partners, had the hard discussion to your point. We wanted to pull every management lever we could. We wanted to help the herds recover. But we wanted to look at that question is how do, for each component, but certainly for wolves, how do you do it most effectively and how do you actually monitor to see effects? So we actually took our time and we struck a working group that had our co-management partners, the Renewable Resources Boards and Indigenous governments, and did what we called a feasibility study. There's been a lot of work done on wolf management and assessing its effectiveness elsewhere, particularly in Alaska, but a number of other jurisdictions, including BC. So we did a very thorough work to help guide how we set up our wolf management program. So that took us a little bit of time, but we thought we want to go in with our eyes wide open, target as effectively as we can. In those jurisdictions, they have the benefit of having done it for considerably longer and having more data. There are cases, and that's how we set our threshold of our targets during our management actions. If you hit a certain proportion of wolves harvested each year, you have to do it for multiple years. I think we set targets of 70 to 80% wolf removal for 80 years. What we'd seen in BC and Alaska is they've been able to document with their data over a much longer time period. If you can sustain that level of harvest, you're actually able to see recovery in some of the herds. There's been some recent publications, scientific publications out of BC documenting where it has helped recovery. So that helped guide our program. Unfortunately, we're early on, so we don't have the data yet to say, are we seeing that here? And we have not necessarily had the level of harvest removals that they were able to see in Alaska and BC. We did do a 5-year wolf management program with the WRB and the Det'anchogh government. We're currently reviewing that, so we'll see what the data tells us, but we don't have an answer yet to say, can we say if we saw any effect. But certainly elsewhere, if you can have that sustained harvest level and you can get your harvesters out there, other jurisdictions have documented it is beneficial. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, and I'll just comment, say that when a wolf produces a litter of 5, 6, I'm sure there's anomalies in there too, but yeah, there's a lot of mouths to feed. I look forward to the data if it's certainly available one day, or at least a little bit of a narrative on that. Thank you. I have MLA Morris followed by MLA Reid, and we'll see where we go next. We're just going to do one question this round just to keep things moving a little quicker. Thank you. When you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a bit hard at this time for me to boil this down to one question because I had a bunch left. I don't know if we're going to need to schedule a follow-up briefing or do a bunch of written questions, but I mean, effectively, what I'm concerned about right now is I asked some fairly direct questions. It's pretty clear to the department doesn't want to answer one of them in particular, and that's what the estimate of total harvest rate is for all caribou in the NWT. If the department can't give an answer, I'd appreciate just being told they can't give an answer as opposed to us kind of going back and forth so much. But sure.
Don't waste your question. Can you answer that question specifically, Mr. Morris? Because I suspect that that's building to his next question. And knowing him for the last 2 years, I don't think that's a huge leap of faith.
Look, it's a pyramid. He has to build the foundation first.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, so if we have a volunteer for that specific question, so we can go into his real question or bigger question. Minister, please, we look forward to this eagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we do have some herd-specific data, but we do not have a number that would cover the whole Northwest Territories. It would vary from year to year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Minister. At least it's a start. MLA Morris, why don't we take a shot at your question, and then we'll come back to you, don't worry. We've locked the doors so they can't leave till the briefing's over.
Okay, thank you. I'll save a set of really specific questions for written because I think it's just a better way to get through it than in the public briefing. So I guess what I'm gonna leave it open for your interpretation. But what I'm trying to get at is what I've been receiving from the public particularly when stories come out about wastage, we start to get a bunch of emails, and I had a number of people reach out to me this year. The general messaging is a lack of public confidence in GNWT's conservation and enforcement measures around caribou. That's why I'm trying to get to numbers, because people are asking me specific questions about it. And I think the difficulty is because we're not publishing numbers, there's a lot of vagary being spoken about. And what I think would help build public confidence is understanding what GNWT thinks is a sustainable take, what is being taken in comparison to that, so that people can have a good understanding of whether harvest is a factor, because it is one of the few things we can control. So that's what I'm really trying to get at. And I think the public has reason to have a lack of confidence because we keep getting reports showing the herds declining and declining and declining. And it's a pretty upsetting story. A lot of people care about caribou deeply in this territory. And I would just say that the urgency with which people are reaching out to me is significant in comparison to other issues. Like, it's very clear to me that people are very concerned about caribou. I think that's clear to the department too. I'm sure it's clear to the minister. I know that you guys participate in significantly more briefings than we do, where people share their concerns, their connection with caribou. And so what I'm really trying to get to is how do we help build confidence in the public through effective enforcement, through effective conservation efforts, and through effective reporting, that we're doing everything we can to protect caribou, to preserve the herd, to hopefully prevent the extinction of the Bathurst herd, because it is unfortunate that that's what we're talking about. But I believe it's important to also talk about reality. And based on the numbers, if the herd loses as many animals as it lost from the last survey, that the herd will, we're talking about extinction at this point. So I think that the public is demanding, significant action, up to and including a total ban on caribou hunting until we figure this out. I'm just curious to hear the department's response to that. I realize it's a big question, but I only have one left, so thank you.
Thank you. Minister, if you could help us with that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll start off by saying I care deeply about the caribou, and I'm here because I believe I speak for the caribou in the NWT, and I think it's our job to speak for the caribou and to work with our co-management partners in that effort. We are one member of a co-management regime that all work together to protect the caribou. I think it can be, to say it's the GNWT is a, one way to phrase it, I guess, but I think that, we don't go this alone. We don't make these decisions on our own. We work together with all of our co-management partners. We take not only our scientific data that all of our great staff do, but we take traditional knowledge. We take the history of the communities. It's a much larger conversation than the GNWT saying that, okay, we're going to ban caribou hunting. If you look at the mobile zone, that was a collaborative effort over a number of years that created a mobile zone to protect the Bathurst. So, these efforts need to be all of us at the table working together. And I think that's how we protect the caribou going forward. I think it's complex. It's, there are a lot of Indigenous governments and organizations that come into this that have positions at the table and we are working very closely together, and I believe we have the collaborative best interest of the caribou at heart, and that's what we're trying to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just be a second. Deputy Minister, did you have something you wish to put on the record while we had you? Please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to perhaps make an attempt on answering the question in terms of what you were, the MLA was referencing in terms of sustainable harvest and sustainable harvest numbers. For the Bathurst, it's zero. We've, since 2015, closed harvesting for Bathurst. For the Blue Nose East, a co-management process, and co-management partners have defined that a total allowable harvest of 395 caribou in Wekwezy is sustainable. 30 animals for the Blue Nose East in the Sawtoo implemented through Delaney's Community Conservation Plan. So these are the sustainable harvest levels that are defined through co-management processes. The Beverly, there's currently no restrictions of Indigenous harvest on the Beverly. And there's one tag for NWT resident harvesters. So that is what is defined as what, for that herd is sustainable. And I think it is important to clarify that in talking about harvest up the winter road, the Tibbet to Contoida winter road, that a large percentage of the harvest along the winter road is from the Beverly herd. There is a mobile no hunting zone that moves. It's not static. It moves with the animals and is intended to protect the animals. And again, as we mentioned, we release that information on a weekly basis. We post it. We provide it to people who go up the winter road. We have an app that people can put on their phone to know where that is. So I hope that helps sort of clarify in terms of what the MLA is asking in terms of sustainable harvest from the different herds. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I now have MLA Reid. For one.
Thanks. I'm trying to decide if I ask a follow-up for my colleague or if I ask the question I was going to originally ask. Are we going to go around again, Mr. Chair?
Well, we're getting awful close to 9 o'clock. In all due respect to members, I mean, I could go another hour, but I don't see that enthusiasm in the room. And in all fairness, I'm sure millions of subscribers online want to turn off too, I'm sure. The point being is then I think we can follow up with some written questions. Okay. We're going with this, so yeah, and I suspect this won't be our only time speaking to the minister and the department about caribou, so it may be our, it's not our only opportunity, and so please.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Then I guess from my question will be to sort of follow up on my colleague's question, which is to say that, you know, that answer is very succinct and to the point, and I appreciate it. The other bookend to that conversation, and what I think we've been circling around for the last couple hours, is indeed that public frustration and furor over wastage. And so whether or not that wastage is a legal harvest or illegal harvest or not is sort of irrelevant at this point. And yes, we've talked about what is the definition of wastage, but I think anybody who sees most of an animal on the side of a road could agree that's wastage. So then it becomes a question of enforcement, and obviously you've said tonight that begins in education and that begins in you know, conversations with our partners. Is there any contemplation then for, I don't even know what the terminology would be, some sort of cross-training paralegal framework for Indigenous partners to have enforcement capabilities such that they could enforce their own folks? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. And, Mr. Minister, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, MLA Reid. So at that level, we haven't had that specific conversation yet about Indigenous governments, you know, essentially making their guardians enforcement officers. We have had conversations about working together with our officers and the guardians programs, and also had some very high-level discussions on what training may be required to ensure that that type of collaborative work could happen. So there are conversations going around that, but that sort of next step, we haven't got to that yet. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. MLA Narasu, no, not a problem. Okay, so I'll squeeze I'll squeeze off one more, and then we'll just do a bit of a wrap-up. I too share the question about how we can use our Guardian program a little further. That's not a question, it's just I look forward to any future ability to expand authorities or powers or abilities to be part of the solution. Eyes and ears are great, but that said, they also sometimes need to come with authority and enforcement tools. I'm just going to run off a couple points, and data's going to be the key. That's one point. So, I mean, I look forward to you being innovative. I often wondered about COVID recovery. They talked after COVID, there was a lot of the natural world really recovered when we paused for a moment, and that is going to lead into my next point, which is at this particular point, we all, I think we agreed to not to a definition, but to at least a point, which is caribou are certainly iconic and in their own way. Whether they're cultural identity, subsistence, and other types of things. I mean, you know, the list goes on. People can identify as it applies, but the point being is it's an iconic species in the Northwest Territories to many people, and so the loss of it would be very frustrating, even just the thought of the doom and gloom. So, which leads me to my final comment, and perhaps maybe point, which is we can conference or counsel our way and even talk ourselves to death on this matter. But I fear that no matter how many councils, conferencing, and discussions we have, really we're at that moment where I fear without bold action, we're going to be talking about extinction as already raised. And I'd rather see, you know, in the context of when they say, well, we're leaders, we're going to make tough choices, I'd rather see the leadership make tough and unpopular choices today than to be governing it from a historical sense. And like I say, it's better to be popular to do something than it is to be extremely unpopular by watching it slip away. And so I would hope that the minister has some ideas on how to be bold in partnership with our collaborative groups. I know it can't be done singularly in isolation, but whether it means incentives or other types of policies to work for folks. I mean, when the Det'anchogh government says we're going to do a 5-year pause, I mean, that should be groundbreaking for people to realize. That's where people are, to a large degree, waiving their Indigenous rights to pursue something that they are legally allowed to do. And it's excessively difficult to imagine the GNWT controlling. It's a profound step to a solution. So I'd ask the minister, are you folks working on bold action in a collaborative sense to help save the caribou? And if that means an outright ban, and I'm not referring to Bathurst, where we all know that the Bathurst is banned, but an outright ban or some type of incentive program for better data, as I pointed out earlier. I mean, we need bold action, and I would hope that the department would have some good ideas on bold action. I mean, you have some very smart people there. Minister, any thoughts on that for my final question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think certainly, I mean, you know, the conversations we've had over the last number of weeks with the leaders have been, I would say, pretty frank and open conversations that, you know, are truly looking at solutions to short, medium, and long-term address the challenges with the decline in the caribou. And I think a lot of those conversations are very bold, as you would characterize it, that you know, I wouldn't say that we've necessarily landed on anything yet, but certainly there have been a lot of very bold conversations around potential paths forward to help address this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. I look forward to any updates you folks have on that, because we're also committee is also part of the solution, and I'll leave it at that. So, Minister, at this point, it looks like we're knocking on the door of 9 o'clock. If members, and if we're comfortable, we'll follow up further in written question, and of course, if members feel that we need to do a further briefing, we know how to get a hold of you. That said, unless there's any dying last-moment questions from members, I will now proceed to a close. So, Minister, I'll give you a chance to finish off the floor in the sense of the conversation. If you have any closing comments before I close this discussion, Mr. Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you and committee for the passion you brought tonight, and You know, I think are all in this room very passionate about the caribou and, you know, the decline and the challenges that we faced over the last number of years. So thank you for that. I would like to offer to committee that if there is interest, we could certainly invite you to coordinate a trip up the Winter Road once it's open in February, March-ish. I'm happy to, you know, take you up and give you a tour. We can visit with some of the folks up and down the Guardians and our enforcement folks. And I think MLA Reed did come on a trip up there with me a couple of winters ago. So we'd love to have you, and thank you again. We'll certainly look forward to the follow-up questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister, and on behalf of committee, I'll accept that offer, and we'll take it back and discuss it further and see how it works out between timing and availability of members, including the minister. So, folks, that brings our presentation and conversation with the minister with respect to Caribou to an end this evening, although I can assure members we are not finished, but that said, much work will continue. So I'd like to thank you, Minister, and all the staff for being here this evening, including our millions of subscribers that have probably followed us along very closely. And therefore, it now concludes our public discussion and briefing on caribou harvesting. And once again, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.